Hello everybody, welcome back to another Bible reading and commentary. Today we're going to be in Genesis 6. I am reading from the NKJV. So, let's get started. Now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. So, already, what I just read has been the source of a lot of conspiracy theories. And what we can know from the Bible story is that it has a origin story of giants. As we read later on in places like Samuel with David and Goliath, Numbers 13 here, just flip with me, follow along if you can. So the reason why Israel stayed in the desert for 40 years was because you had the 12 spies, the 10 coward spies, and the 2 Joshua and Caleb. And the reason why they were in the desert for 40 years was verse 31 of chapter 13 of Numbers. But the men who had gone up with them said, We will not be able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone as spies, in a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it were men of great stature. There we saw the giants, the descendants of Anak from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight. And so we were in our own sight. So it has a very literal, you could say, origin of giants. They are cannibalistic in nature, and they're evil. Many Near Eastern flood stories and whatnot also have giants. And also to note that almost all mythologies, all cultures' mythologies, whether that be Norse, Norse, Greek, Roman, even Indians, they have stories of giants. So I think they existed. That, and in the early 1900s, they were in the newspaper. They published finding after finding of giant excavation sites, and they're found, in all sorts of mythology stories. And we have also a narrative of how they would produce the sons of God. The sons of God, as we can presuppose, were angels, and angels being fallen angels, coming into the sons of, or came into the daughters of men. So it's fallen angels mating with human women. I can't quite parse out what it means that when the Lord says, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. I have no clue what that means. So, verse 5. Then the Lord saw the wickedness of man was on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. For the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing, and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of God. So, that's a really sad statement. Other times, as we'll read throughout the Torah and the Bible, he's been, quite upset and mad at the Israelites. But from what I know of, I think this is the only time where he's sad. That the creature that he made in his what that he made in his own image for good and for to have a relationship with him was only evil continually. Also, there's a notion of if God is omniscient, then how can he be sorry he did something? Because if he exists outside of time and he knows the future, how can he be sorry for something? And the easy answer for that is, he can, something is within his will for men to have free will, but it is not the way he wants it, if that makes any sense. Verse 9, this is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. A lot of commentary has sprouted from this as well, of whether Noah was, a lot of, Jewish literature and commentary on this, whether he was actually a just man, a righteous man, or if he was a normal guy in what would be considered a moral society. So what I mean by that is, was his virtue and his righteousness exceptional, even, to anyone's standards, or was he just a upright person in such a perverse world? Noah walked with God, and Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So a lot of extra biblical texts, Jubilees, Jasher, and Enoch, they have, and once again, where I said a lot of conspiracy theories stem from this, is a lot of people think, maybe, giant DNA polluted all the Earth's inhabitants, of how is it completely corrupt? I think it was morally corrupt, if you want my take on it. And the earth was filled with violence, so God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on earth. These are views popular with guys like Rob Skiba, God rest his soul, and things like that. I don't know, and I think we're getting too caught in the weeds. We shouldn't completely dismiss this stuff because it's in the Bible, but we also shouldn't focus too much on it either. Verse 13. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them from the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and out with pitch. So 2 things. The only other time the word ark in the Hebrew, it's tivah. The only other time it is used is in the Moses story of, and I think it means a vessel, a water vessel directed by God, I guess would be the best way to put it. Second thing is pitch is like, I don't know what it could have been in these days, but it's like a pine resin that the ancients used for glue. Also, another third thing, gopher, scholars don't know what type of wood it was because it doesn't appear in any other texts, and it doesn't appear anywhere else throughout the Bible, so we have no clue. Verse 15, and this is how you shall make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. A cubit roughly is 18 inches, the distance from your elbow to the top of your middle finger, as a frame of reference. Verse 16, you shall make a window for the ark, and you shall finish it to a cubit from above, and set the door of the ark on its side, or in its side. Another thing I wanted to mention is in other flood stories, it goes to show that God cares about the morality of the entire world. In other flood stories, the gods flood the earth for pretty petty reasons. I believe in the Mesopotamian myth, the gods flood the earth because mankind is being too loud. I don't know if it's the Mesopotamian, but one of those, the gods flood the earth because man is being too noisy. And um, and it goes to show, also another thing that separates the Torah from other things, from other stories, is that God is interested in the moral behavior of not just His own people, Israel, but of all the world. The second thing is that, how do I put this? That God isn't just a nation, or He's not a God of one nation, if that makes sense. He's a God to all. The other gods and other myths, they were very focused upon that particular people group. There's a Samoan flood myth. Once again, all these cultures have flood myths, and flood stories, but it always deals with the only individual people. So I figured that would be interesting. Verse 16, I forgot my place. You shall make a window for the ark, and you shall finish it to a cubit from above, and set the door of the ark in its side. You shall make it with the lower, second, and third decks. And behold, I myself am bringing flood waters on all the earth, to destroy from under heaven all the flesh in which has the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh that you bring two of every sort into the ark, and keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female, of all the birds of their kind, of animals after their kind, and of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind. Two of every kind will come to you to keep them alive, and you shall make for yourself of all food that is eaten. You shall gather it to yourself. It shall be food for you and for them. Thus Noah did according to all that God commanded him, so he did. So here we have parameters of how, very specific and detailed parameters of how God wants Noah to go about this. Chapter 7. Then the Lord said to Noah, Come into the ark, you and all your household, because I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. You shall take with you 7 each of every clean animal, a male and his female, 2 each of animals that are unclean, a male and his female, also 7 of each of birds in the air, male and female, to keep the species alive on the face of the earth. For after 7 more days, I will cause it to rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will destroy from the face of the earth all living things that I have made. And Noah did according to all that the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters were on the earth. So more Bible mysteries that we'll never know in this lifetime. The age of Noah and all these things. A lot of people think it is a, code or allegory for deeper biblical truths. We'll never know. Verse 7. So Noah with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives went to the ark because of the waters of the flood. Of clean animals, of animals that are unclean, of birds, and of everything that creeps on the earth, 2 by 2 they went into the ark to Noah, male and female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month of the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. And the rain was on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah and Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, Japheth, and his sons with them entered the ark. They and every beast after its kind, all cattle after their kind, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every bird after its kind, every bird of every sort. And they went into the ark to Noah, 2 by 2 of all flesh, in which has the breath of life. So those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. Analyzing other cultures' flood myths, it was always the person themselves who shut in the ark, but in this case, God does. I figured, you'd want to know that. Pretty interesting detail. So the flood was on the earth for 40 days. The waters increased and lifted up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and greatly increased on the earth, and the ark moved about the surface of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly on the earth, and all the high hills under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed 15 cubits upward, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds and cattle and beasts, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of the spirit of life. All that was on the dry land died. So he destroyed all living things which were on the face of the ground, both man and cattle, creeping thing and bird of the air. They were destroyed from the earth. Only Noah and those who were with him in the ark remained alive. And the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. So, before we move on to chapter 8, another thing I want to discuss is the purification in the Torah. In the Torah, it lays out two methods of purification. That is water and fire. And we know, as we'll read a lot later on, the earth will be purified with fire. In this case, he's purifying it with water. Chapter 8. Then God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the animals that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the water subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven were also stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters receded continually from the earth. At the end of the 150 days, the waters decreased. Then the ark rested in the 7th month, the 17th day of the month, and on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. So it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. Mind you, it only rained for 40 days and 40 nights. That wasn't how long he was on the ark. He was on the ark, I think, for over half a year. Then he sent... So it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. Then he sent out a raven which kept going to and fro until the waters had dried up from the earth. He also sent out from himself a dove to see if the waters had receded from the face of the ground. But the dove found no resting place for the sole of her foot, and she returned to him into the ark to him, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and drew her into the ark to himself. And he waited yet another 7 days, and again he sent the dove out from the ark. Then the dove came to him in the evening, and behold, a freshly plucked olive leaf was in her mouth. And Noah knew that the waters had receded from the earth. So he waited yet another 7 days and sent out the dove, which did not return again to him any more. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the 1st month, the 1st day of the month, that the waters were dried up from the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and indeed the surface of the ground was dry. And in the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dried. Then God spoke to Noah, saying, Go out of the ark, you, your wife, and your sons wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing of all flesh that is with you, birds and cattle, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, so that they may abound on the earth, and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every animal, every creeping thing, every bird, and everything that creeps on the earth, according to their families, went out of the ark. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a soothing aroma. Then the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground for man's sake, although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Nor will I again destroy every living thing as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease. So that wraps it up. We will step back in at chapter 9. Thank you for listening.